There's a specific moment in every relationship where a man stops believing what you say about yourself and starts watching what you actually do. Most women never see it coming. Once that shift happens, everything changes. Not because he became cold or distant, but because he stopped assuming you meant what you said. And from that point forward, he's measuring the gap between your words and your behavior. That gap is all the data he needs. This isn't about being more available or more attractive or trying harder. This is about the 5 specific things he's tracking the entire time you're together. The things that are slowly deciding whether he leans in or protects himself. And here's what almost nobody talks about. He's not telling you he's seeing these things. So the question is, what if the distance you're feeling from him right now isn't about what you're doing wrong, but about something he's already decided about who you actually are? Before we get into what those 5 things actually are, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt his attention shift mid-conversation, even though nothing obvious was said? Have you noticed that he used to reach out first, and now you're always the one keeping things moving forward? Have you brought something to him, a real concern, a decision you were making, and watched his eyes go distant, like he was already thinking about something else? Or maybe this one hits harder. You're explaining something important, he listens, but the moment you finish, he doesn't ask for more. He just agrees. And something about that agreement feels hollow. And then there's this feeling that maybe he's with you because you're useful or because you keep things steady, but not because he's genuinely interested in who you actually are. These are not separate problems. They're all symptoms of the same shift. And understanding that shift is the difference between a relationship that deepens and one that slowly becomes a functional arrangement. Before we continue, have you ever recognized yourself in a pattern like this? Drop a comment, no judgment here, and subscribe if you want more content that actually explains the why behind what happens. Here's what most people don't understand about relationship shifts. They don't happen in a single moment. They happen in 1,000 small moments that don't look like warnings when they're happening. Think about the beginning. The first month, maybe the first 3 months. What was that like? He was asking questions, not just about your surface, but about how you actually think, why you believe what you believe, what actually matters to you. There was a texture to his curiosity. It felt like genuine interest. And he was reaching out first. Not always, but enough that it felt mutual. Enough that you didn't have to wonder whether he was actually interested or just responsive. The conversations felt real. You could say something difficult or complicated, and instead of him shutting down or changing the subject, he'd ask follow-up questions. He wanted to understand, not to fix, not to problem solve, just to understand. There was vulnerability. He shared things, real things, doubts, fears, the stuff you don't usually lead with. And that felt like trust being built. Looking back, and this is important, the first sign was already there. It just did not look like a warning yet. It was so small, so easily explained. He was just distracted. He was just tired. It meant nothing. But that moment, that small withdrawal of attention, it was the first data point. The first measurement of whether his interest was rock solid or whether it was conditional on something. And then, slowly, other things started changing. Not dramatically, but measurably. This is where it gets specific. Because once you see this pattern, you cannot unsee it. Thing number 1, the consistency gap. He notices the distance between what you say you value and what you actually do. Not as judgment, as data. A woman says, "I really value honesty and direct communication." The statement. Then something real happens. She's hurt, frustrated, uncertain. And what emerges is indirect communication. The gap is registered. What happens next? He stops fully believing the stated values. He stops sharing as openly. He starts planning around inconsistency. The micro behavior. Watch his face the next time you say something matters to you, and then you handle a situation in a completely different way. You'll see a micro expression, a slight tightening, recognition that what you say and what you do don't align. Thing number 2, effort asymmetry. Men notice who's initiating contact, not as a scorecard, as pattern recognition. She's the one sending the first text most mornings. She's the one suggesting dates. She's the one reaching out after an argument. She's the one keeping conversation alive when it stalls. He's responsive. He shows up. But the engine, the thing that keeps it moving, is being powered by her. The psychological consequence is measurable. He's measuring whether he's wanted or whether he's being pursued. These are neurologically different experiences. The micro behavior. Notice when he stops initiating anything. A text, a date idea, a conversation about something that matters to him. The absence of his initiative is the data point. Thing number 3, conflict shutdown. This one separates people doing real work from people performing the idea of a healthy relationship. You bring something up, something real, a concern, a boundary, something that actually bothers you. His immediate response is open. He's listening. But the moment you go deep, the moment there's real discomfort, something shifts. Silence, extended silence, a shutdown, or a pivot. Suddenly he's bringing up something you did wrong instead of staying with the actual issue. The psychology. Conflict is where intimacy either deepens or dies. If your actual response to conflict is withdrawal, he now has real data. This person cannot stay present during discomfort. And intimacy requires staying present during discomfort. The micro behavior. His jaw tightens. His eyes look away. His breathing changes. These are not conscious choices. These are physiological responses to the discomfort of real conflict. And he's watching for your response to his discomfort, not just the conflict itself. Thing number 4, input versus agreement. When you bring something to him, an idea, a concern, a decision, there's an invisible test. Do you actually want his thinking, or do you want his validation? He offers genuine input, perspective that's different from yours, a question that pushes back, a concern he actually has. What happens next determines everything. Does she listen? Actually listen? Or does she immediately explain why his perspective doesn't apply? Become defensive? Minimize his thinking? The consequence. Partnership requires actual difference. It requires your partner to sometimes disagree. If what you want is agreement, you don't want a partner. You want an audience. The micro behavior. Watch what happens in his face the moment you become defensive about his input. You'll see the exact moment he decides whether to keep offering genuine thoughts or start telling you what you want to hear. That decision, made in a microsecond, changes the entire trajectory of the relationship. Thing number 5, curiosity about the actual person versus the role you fill. This is the most consequential one. Men can feel when they're appreciated as a person versus when they're appreciated as a solution. You're interested in him when you're curious about his internal world, his fears, his doubts, his actual perspectives, the things that matter to him that have nothing to do with you. You ask questions you don't need the answers to. You remember details he mentions offhand. You're interested in the idea of him when he's filling a role. The stable one, the confident one, the provider, the protector. The behavioral evidence is the questions you ask. If you're curious about him, you're asking about his interior life. If you're interested in the idea, you're asking about his capacity to meet your needs. The micro behavior. Watch his face when you ask him something about his own struggle, his own world, something that has nothing to do with you or the relationship. Does his eyes soften? Does he lean in? Or does he realize you're not actually interested? You're just waiting for him to finish so you can bring it back to something that concerns you? And here's the thing. All five of these things are being tracked simultaneously. Not consciously, not as a checklist, but neurologically. Each one is a measurement of the same underlying question. Is this person actually available to know me? Or are they only interested in what I can do for them? And once that question gets answered, once the pattern becomes clear, there is no looking away. So what happens after he's seen all five of these things? He doesn't blow up the relationship. He doesn't have a dramatic conversation. He doesn't accuse you of anything. What he does is simpler and more permanent. He stops being vulnerable. The questions stop coming, not because he's angry, but because he's already gotten the answers he needed. And the answers told him that deep vulnerability isn't safe with you. His investment flattens. The relationship becomes functional. He shows up. He's present. But the texture changes. The spontaneity decreases. Plans are made, but not with the excitement they used to be made with. And you feel it. That's the thing almost nobody talks about. You feel the shift even if you don't understand it. Here's the hard truth. Once a man stops believing you're actually interested in him, once he decides the gap between your words and your behavior is too wide, he doesn't become a better partner. He becomes a more cautious one. He still cares, but he cares the way you care about something that might break. Carefully, protectively, and the distance you're feeling, the thing that made you realize something shifted, that's not him pulling away. That's him recalibrating how much of himself is actually safe to show you. The cost is real, for both of you, because what you've lost isn't his love. It's his openness. And openness is what transforms a relationship from a partnership into an arrangement. Here's what I want you to understand. None of this is about being wrong. None of this is about being a bad person. The gap between what you say and what you do, the effort asymmetry, the conflict avoidance, the preference for agreement over genuine input, the tendency to be interested in the role instead of the person. These aren't character flaws. They're patterns, and patterns can be interrupted. But here's the thing. They can only be interrupted if you see them. The bigger truth underneath all of this isn't about what men want. It's about what partnerships require. Real partnerships require someone who is willing to be known and to actually know someone else. Not the performed version. Not the version that fits nicely. The actual person, with the contradictions and the fears and the things that don't make sense. And if you're creating distance from that, through inconsistency, through unequal effort, through conflict avoidance, through choosing agreement over genuine engagement, through being interested in what he provides instead of who he is, you're not creating a safe space for partnership. You're creating a reason for him to protect himself. Here are two things to notice next time you recognize one of these patterns in yourself. First, the gap between what you say and what you do. Next time you catch yourself saying something matters to you, honesty, direct communication, presence, and then you handle a situation in a way that contradicts that, just notice it. Don't judge it. Just see it. Because the moment you see the pattern, you have the option to interrupt it. Second, who's powering the engine? If you're consistently the one initiating, suggesting, reaching out, keeping things moving, stop. Not to punish him, not to test him, but to notice what actually happens when you step back. Is he reaching for you? Or is the relationship held only by your effort? The answers to those two questions will tell you everything. Before we close, what is one dating pattern you have noticed in yourself that you are still trying to understand? Drop it in the comments. No judgment, just honest recognition. And if this content, this kind of honest breakdown of what's actually happening beneath the surface, if this stays with you, you know what to do. Subscribe. The next video goes deeper into what happens after a man has made this decision and what you can actually do about it. The distance you're feeling from him isn't random, and it's not because you're not enough. It's because something he's already decided about who you actually are. The question is, are you willing to see what that is?